Hello everybody, here we are today and we are going to be doing a video that was suggested by one of you guys. It was Brad. I do apologize for putting this out like a week later after you asked. With Halloween being crazy and just having a lot of stuff we were doing over the weekend and stuff throughout the week, I actually didn't feel good yesterday. It's just been a crazy week, but we are putting it out now and I'm going to try to be able to hopefully do a good job on this video talking about a decentralized draft and my opinions on it. So before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So the NHL essentially wants to decentralize the draft by 2025, and what that means is you would have more of a local feel. Instead of having a host city, you would still have the host city, but it would be more similar to the NFL and the NBA drafts, where there's less individuals involved from the team and you're able to just kind of keep a lot of your guys back in your city that are part of your organization. So we're going to be getting into the pros and the cons of that, and then I'll give you my opinion. So let's kick off with the pros. The first one seems to feel like the least important to me, but it was something that was reiterated by multiple NHL workers that were part of teams, whether those be executives, and that was the fact that they feel like this could be a lot cheaper. You don't have to be able to figure out, hey, we're going to have all these teams here for the draft. We have to figure out a hotel. We have to figure out, how to feed the guys for however long they're going to be there for the draft. And we're going to just be able to not have to worry about that to nearly the same extent anymore. And we're going to get to save money, which, again, seems to be a big factor in this. I don't necessarily agree with that, but again, I guess saving money is a good thing if you're the person that's making decisions for the organization. The second thing actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't even really think about this per se, but it's the fact that you wouldn't have to worry about your guys getting back before the start of free agency. So you have the draft, which is usually late June, right? And then free agency, which is the beginning of July. So, if you're in a different city and the weather is really bad, you could end up having like most of your guys there that are part of your scout team, that are part of, the GM, all that good stuff, that are in another city. And if there's bad weather, whether you're in that city or it's back in your hometown, suddenly all your guys or most of your guys are gone. And that could be a major issue when you're trying to figure out stuff with the draft, when you're trying to figure out stuff with qualifying offers, when you're trying to figure out stuff for free agency, kind of an important deal. So this is a big pro that a lot of, execs and stuff like that are saying we could get with a decentralized draft. A lot of their guys back in one place, not having to worry about making sure they get back safely, and then also not having to worry about, oh, what if half my guys aren't here when it's free agency? Another pro is the fact that it is supposedly easier to hear, which does make sense. You have a lot of chatter in a relatively small room. Again, with having so many teams there, I could see how this would be an issue, but multiple people in an article that was wrote by The Athletic talked about how it can be very difficult to hear and even think. So I guess when it comes to having the draft, I guess you'd want a sense of quiet because you are, impacting the future of your franchise. That being said, they should have a lot of time to be prepared for the draft, so I don't think there's anything so crazy that you would say, oh, this is a dire problem. But maybe there was before, where they said we ended up not getting to do what we wanted because we couldn't figure out whatever the situation was at the time, because we couldn't hear, and then our draft was impacted by that. And then the final pro that I wanted to talk about was the fact that this would be more like the NFL and the NBA. And while I don't really watch either of those leagues, I do know this because I did used to follow both of these leagues. Those drafts are really big and really important. The NFL draft, me and my friends from high school used to be able to get together on the first round or the first night of draft, and we would just eat food and then watch the draft. That is something that we did. And while two of us were big hockey fans, the rest of them weren't necessarily, so they weren't too big on the draft. NBA draft, I didn't really care as much. But we did have a few buddies that were really big into the NBA, and they really like to do it. So the NHL is coming off of its first season, or its best season in terms of draft coverage and how many people watched it last year, the Connor Bedard effect. So to just kind of go and enhance on that, you'd like to see the NHL draft become better and see more and more people be interested in it again, kind of like the NFL, where everybody gets some food, they gather around, and then see some guys end up getting drafted, hopefully for their team that they want to be drafted there. Now, one of the cons, where we see a break in tradition. This has been something that's been going on since the early 60s. And yeah, I mean, the COVID years did affect it a little bit, but in general, this is hockey tradition. And it's kind of a big deal because we are a little bit different compared to some other leagues and how they do it. And I do think tradition is important. And it's something that even in sports, I feel like is almost especially important because it gives you something even further to connect to, because you're already connecting to fans that are part of your fan base. and to have something that connects all fans, I think, is really important. And I would say that breaking tradition would hurt in this scenario, but I guess it wouldn't be the all-deciding factor. Another con is they're doing it, I think, for a main reason to save money. And I'm just going to say this. If you've got owners that are worth billions with a B, not with an M, how much money do they really need to save? How much does it cost to get all your guys to fly out to whatever city it is and then house them in a hotel or whatever the case is over the course of however many nights they need? Probably not nearly as much money as they even make in a day. And I know some people will say, oh, well, it's their team and they're part of the league and they're owners and they can make decisions like that. They can, but how cheap are you to where you couldn't even pay to send these guys out to a city and, you know, be a part of the draft? It's really one of those deals where I want to know how much money it actually costs, and I can guarantee you whenever we figure out what that is or what that would be, it wouldn't be as dramatic as they're making it out to be. Another thing is it takes away from the guys that are able to be there for the draft that probably wouldn't be there. Again, if you have all members of your, your scout team or whatever it is that you're bringing out there, to have them there, even if they're not up there and all of them there to be on the stage, just to be able to greet the player after they end up drafting him, just to be able to say, I was part of it. I could say that I got to shake his hand and just build this organization and be part of a pivotal moment. Do you think that the guys that drafted Connor Bedard were pretty happy to be there, even if they weren't the GM? Probably. So I think for this situation, you have a lot of guys that work really hard, a lot of women too that work really hard to be able to get scouting for these players to say, this is who we want in the draft. So you'd kind of want to be able to see those people that put in the hard work and say, these are the people we are scouting for in this region. This is who we think are going to be good. And to see them, get their moment too, I guess, even though they're not a player. And then the final con, which isn't really as massive, is just the fact that the players don't get as great of a chance to familiarize or meet some of these guys that are part of the staff. So again, it's probably going to be one of those deals where you get to meet the GM, you get to meet, the owner, whatever the case may be. With this decentralized draft, you're going to meet, obviously, the commissioner. But some of these people that very well could have been the people that showed interest in you, especially if you were a guy that falls a little bit in the draft for whatever reason, or maybe you aren't expected to be in the first round, it would kind of be nice to see a face that was the person involved in getting you drafted to that team. I'm not saying that that is the end-all be-all. Like, a lot of these I don't think are end-all be-alls, but it's one of those deals where you're going to be young, you're going to be getting drafted probably to another city. It would be a good deal to have a familiar face that is friendly and is somebody you would, kind of get to see around the organization, around the building, around the practice area, all that stuff, and say, hey, Kenny, how are you today, blah, blah, blah. Because when you are suddenly a millionaire and living in another city where you're away from your parents probably, I imagine that's difficult. So overall, what are my final thoughts on this? I am not necessarily one way or the other. I do think I'm leaning towards keeping the tradition and have the draft stay where it is instead of it being decentralized. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, this could become like the NFL or the NBA draft. It's not going to be. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but with the NFL, college football is insanely popular in the U.S. It's insanely popular in other countries that aren't even in the U.S., and it's just one of those deals where they get a wild amount of coverage. If the NFL, or not the NFL, the NHL cannot keep up the coverage that you need to be able to have the prospects talked about enough for the draft, then it really doesn't matter. You're never going to be the NFL or the NBA. And the NBA only has like 2 rounds in the draft. So you have a general idea about who these guys are if you follow college basketball or you follow some of these foreign leagues where they are hyped up as the next big deal. And I think the NHL does hold true to that. Mishkov and some of these other guys that are foreign players, we know who they are. But when you start to slide a little bit in the draft and some of these guys are from places you don't know about per se, it's not as big of a deal. So I don't ever think it's going to be up there with the NFL or the NBA. And I do think that the money costs aren't as bad as they're making it out to be. So I would prefer to keep it how it is. But if it changes and we do see some positives where more and more people are watching the draft, I'm all for it. Anyway, what are your thoughts for that? Again, thank you, Brad, for suggesting that. Sorry for putting this out so late. Anyway, everybody, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody, stay safe. Have a great night. And Eagle of Hockey already. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.